Lord, I was so sad. When I was a sinner, I used to boast around. I thought I was a nobleman. Lord, I was so sad.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord, just to set me free.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Lord, just to set me free. When I was a sinner, I used to boast around. I thought I was a nobleman. Lord, I was so sad. When I was a sinner, I used to boast around. I thought I was...
Substance abuse is fast becoming a major problem in this part of the world. It is something that is destroying our youth, our families, and communities out there. Now, this scourge paints a very grim picture of our country and needs community cooperation in fighting it. So what substances are abused out there, and what are the reasons behind it? What are the effects of substance abuse on our physical, mental, and social well-being? What can we do to prevent this problem from spreading across the country? And how can those that feel trapped in the spiral of abuse be assisted to get out? Well, stay tuned, because this is the focus of our show today: substance abuse. We have a guest panel comprised of a psychologist, representatives from the Department of Social Development, Sanka, Concerned Young People of South Africa, a school principal from a famous high school in Soweto, and of course a live studio audience. Now, we invite you to be part of this show by simply just putting a few questions to us or just sharing your views. If you want to do that, the number to call is 714-6918 or 6919. You can also tweet us at SABC Health Talk, or simply just interact with us on our Facebook page, SABC Health Talk. Sit back, relax, and learn from this exciting show. Coming to you just after a short break. I'm Dr. Seloma Daung, and this is Health Talk.
Need a natural multivitamin and mineral immune booster that lifts your energy and balances your pH levels? Sure you do. Lerumo, with 15 times the potassium in bananas, 17 times the calcium in milk, 10 times the vitamin A in carrot, 25 times the iron in spinach, 9 times the protein in yogurt, and 97 times the vitamin B in kale. Lerumo, the superhero. On the inside. Available at Dis-Chem, leading pharmacies and health stores countrywide. Lerumo, feel the difference.
This story is about what happens when we put our differences aside and we come together as a human race.
Salt makes its way out of the kitchen into the art studio.
Normally, you know, salt is for food and stuff, but then here's salt.
Past couple of months, I've grown so much, and I'm just ready to impart what I've learned to the next Miss South Africa.
I wasn't expecting this. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm feeling so overwhelmed.
For your weekly dose of entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Before, when I started it, I smoked it only at school. Only at school, at break time.
Every child in South Africa will have come into contact with drugs by the time they leave secondary school. 1 in 3 will have taken them. Increasingly, the drug of choice is heroin. We went undercover with the Community Police Forum and discovered that drugs are just as easy to get at school as on the streets.
If you don't smoke, which means you're going to suffer inside. So you have to work hard for it so that you can get it, no matter what.
When the robot is red, I see maybe in the car there's something that I can sell. I just take it and run away. Me, after we go steady, after I go smoke.
That's how we got here, where we are now. Now it's hard to get out.
Yeah, well, this is a very, very serious problem indeed, and that's probably one of the reasons why we felt that we needed to do this show today. And helping me today in this show, let's start up with the first 2 guests that I have on my panel. Closest to me is Chris Kemp. Chris is a clinical psychologist in private practice out here in Bryanston in Johannesburg. And next to Chris is Metibelom Konto. She is the Gauteng Social Development Director of Substance Abuse, Social Crime Prevention and Victim Empowerment. Welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you.
Thank you,
right.
Dr. Mdown.
Perhaps, Chris, let's start with you. We're talking substance abuse, and maybe let's just get a few definitions, basic concepts out there. You hear about, substance abuse, drug abuse, and what's the difference between drugs and substances? What are we talking about here?
Well, in the psychiatric field, there's been quite a lot of, I don't want to say controversy, but they've sort of refined the definitions quite a lot, and they're struggling to come up with something that they are clear on when it comes to abuse, dependence. They've now changed it to use disorder. I think the important things to note are there's a few basic factors that you're looking for. That it's interfering with your relationships, be it family, friends, romantic relationships. Drugs are interfering with your work, your ability to sort of do your day-to-day life. And on top of that, a big one is that you've tried to stop and have been unable to.
Okay.
It's a big factor as well.
Okay, so when we normally talk about substances, we include alcohol in there.
Yes.
Do we?
Yes.
Okay. So perhaps let's get from the government's perspective. I mean, what is the pattern like, at least in Gauteng? What is the pattern of usage?
In Gauteng, we are having a serious challenge with Nyaupe, more especially in the townships. So Nyaupe, as we all know, it's a concoction that is made of cheapest form of heroin, and they mix it with all other things, the Retex, the Vim and contraceptives, and even, ARVs. So we've got children as young as 9 years that are addicted to drugs, and the mean age of abuse we're seeing is around from 9 up until the mean age is about 27. 27 of age, but like I said, children are starting from as young as 9 years to start taking hard drugs.
So she mentions Nyaupe, and we do know that there are other hard substances. In your experience, in your field, what are the sort of things that you come across?
I think she's absolutely correct in that Nyaupe is the big one right now, and I think the reason it's so dangerous is because it's cheap and highly addictive, very dangerous as well. So it is a major challenge. One of the big risk factors for drug use is poverty, and unfortunately a lot of these drugs do come cheap. So things like Nyaupe, low quality tick, crystal meth, things like that are becoming more and more of a problem every day.
All right, we're going to come back to what some of those reasons that promote drug abuse a bit later. I do know that we have a studio audience here, and amongst the studio, amongst the audience, I'm told that in fact there are people that are currently using drugs themselves that may perhaps be struggling with abuse, and I'll invite anybody from the studio audience to perhaps just share with us what are the sort of substances out there that are a major problem out there. Anybody from the studio, from the audience? Right? Somebody there?
I can also say that the biggest problem it is Nyaupe, because I am also coming from that problem. I was trapped by Nyaupe maybe for 7 years, but after that I was delivered by the Lord Jesus Christ, and today I've been set free. Maybe about for 4 years now I'm clean. But Nyaupe is a very dangerous and addictive drug. It is cheap, but if you are not working, it is very hard to afford it, especially if you are a student from school or you are learning. You have to steal. So that is why I say that it is very dangerous, because it forces anyone that is using it to steal, even though you don't like to steal. But you have to steal because you suffer if you didn't use it.
All right. Anybody else who wants to comment? I know that we have a few people here. We have somebody from South African Drug Alliance, perhaps. And perhaps if you can just say who you are before you say whatever you need to say, yeah?
My name is Jack Machiani. I'm from Ivory Park. I'm a recovering addict. I've been using drugs for about 12 years and 3 months. Now I'm 9 months clean. So the problem is Nyaupe, obviously. Nyaupe, and this other one, they call it rock. They call it rock. It's like a crystal, that one. They smoke it with pipes. So that one also is too dangerous. Somebody who uses Nyaupe is also using that one. They call it rock. So I was addicted, very, very much addicted. I didn't know what to do. I was stealing. I was in jail. I was trying to quit, but I couldn't quit. But now at least I'm nine months clean with the help of Sanka. I was in rehab in October last year. October last year I was in rehab. So the rehab helped me a lot.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. We're going to learn more about the rehab and that sort of thing. But let's just get back to you, Chris. Why do we worry about substance abuse? What are the sort of, what impact does it have on our social lives and perhaps even physically?
I think it's all encompassing. I mean, if you go far enough down that hole, it can impact your social life, your relationships, destroy your ability to work, and of course destroy your health as well. I mean, we're talking about major long-term health damage that can be done, especially these cheaper substances as well, that are like Tebelo was saying, they mix it, and you were saying as well, they mix it with different things that are not something you should be taking into your body.
Yeah. So how does it develop? I mean, we know that people, especially teenagers, tend to try stuff out, and it gets to a point where they become addicted. And perhaps comment on that.
Yes, they start with experimentation out of curiosity.
Right.
And with drugs like Nyaupe, unfortunately, once you start, there's no more turning back. So that's why we are saying they must not even think of starting. So they start with experimentation, and others becomes doing it socially, and they'll say, I'm only taking it during, weekends or recreationally. But they end up going through the stages and going into chronic addiction, and that's where it becomes a serious problem that affects all the dimensions of their lives. So they will be affected both socially, emotionally, psychologically, and financially as well. So it will affect you as an individual, it will affect your family, it affects the entire community, where you're staying. So that's why we're saying that prevention is better than cure.
Okay. I mean, we obviously, in the latter stages of Youth Month, and we worry a lot about what happens in schools and the youth out there, and these are the very ones that, experiment on things. Can I perhaps get a comment from you in terms of Dagga? Dagga was reported to be perhaps one of the biggest, drug problems, as it were, in terms of, young people trying it out. Your experience in that regard?
It's a very commonly used drug. Again, it's also very cheap. But sort of the jury is out on Dagga at the moment. There's a lot of controversy and discussion worldwide in terms of, I'm sure you're familiar with all the legalization processes that have been happening around the world. We know that it is not a physically addictive drug. That does not mean that you cannot form a psychological addiction to it, just like you would perhaps with gambling or something similar. So it's less of a high-risk drug like Nyaupe, but in terms of what should be allowed, what should be legal, what shouldn't be legal, there's still a lot of discussion around that right now.
But I'm sure there's issues around, it being associated or leading up to some of the more harder drugs, isn't it?
Yes. From our side as social development, we even discourage use of cigarettes because children that have never smoked cigarettes, the likelihood of them taking dagga are very slim. So we even say that from cigarettes, they must not do it. Dagga, it's a big problem. Even our statistics for children that are accessing our treatment programs, that children under 20, it's around 79% of children are, are less than 20 years of age that are accessing our treatment programs that are addicted to, to dagga. And from dagga, they then move to harder, stuff like nyaupe, your crack cocaine, your tick.
Yeah, all right. Perhaps at this time, let's just, I know there's a question from the audience. Perhaps let's take the question and we need to link up to a break, yeah?
You said that dagga is a gateway drug. Now, I'm going to point to several universities. My name is Quinton van Kerken. I'm from the Anti-Drug Alliance South Africa. There's several research projects that have been shown, and by universities like Harvard, Columbia, that sort of thing, that it is absolutely not the gateway drug, proven statistically. So can you please tell me where your academic research comes from that says that dagga is the gateway drug?
All right. We were just taking that question. We need to link up to a quick break. When we come back, we'll try and answer that question and continue our discussions on substance abuse. Please stay with us.
Need a natural multivitamin and mineral immune booster that lifts your energy and balances your pH levels? Sure you do. Lerumo, with 15 times the potassium in bananas, 17 times the calcium in milk, 10 times the vitamin A in carrot, 25 times the iron in spinach, 9 times the protein in yogurt, and 97 times the vitamin B in kale. Lerumo, the superhero. On the inside. Available at Dis-Chem, leading pharmacies and health stores countrywide. Lerumo, feel the difference.
Africa is getting more and more digitized, and people have to navigate through an increasingly connected world.
I did a call my bay over here.
At school, I use my Wi-Fi.
On Network, we tell you about Africa's technology and social media landscape.
Politicians already do use Twitter a lot.
It's both Android and iOS compatible.
A solar charged box that includes everything, the computer, the projector.
That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 9 p.m.
Welcome back. We're talking substance abuse, and with me in my studio is Chris Kemp, who's a psychologist based in Bryanston out there. And we're also joined by Adam Mikkelberg, who's a member of the Concerned Young People of South Africa. Welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you.
Adam, okay. I want to come back to you and ask you about what this organization is. But first up, Quinton asked a question around dagga and it being a gateway to other drugs. His view is that actually it isn't, because he's got, studies to back that up. And he'd like to know on what basis are we saying it is. Would you like to tackle that? Yeah?
Sure. Well, I think that in terms of children, I think we can all agree that marijuana use should be regulated much the same way we regulate cigarettes and alcohol. So I think no one, especially Quinton, is advocating for the use of marijuana amongst children. Even in countries where it has been legalized, of course, there is an age limit as well, much in the same way there is with cigarettes and alcohol. The idea of it being a gateway drug, like Quinton says, the research is ongoing there because there are many adults who have been found to use marijuana recreationally and also exclusively. They don't move on to other drugs. So this sort of common knowledge of it being a gateway drug is starting to be challenged. As it becomes legalized, as it becomes more accepted, more research comes out.
Okay, so at least he's got a basis to say that. Your response?
As an organization, we've been conducting a survey with the young people who have come to us for help over the past few years. To date, we've had answers from 8,250 young people who are addicted to drugs. 96% of those 8,250 individuals stated that the first drug they ever used was dagga. 2/3 of those individuals reported that they went on to use harder drugs. And based on those findings alone, we cannot agree with the statement made by Mr. van Niekerk. We would also add that the circumstances in South Africa are different to first world countries, and we are lacking studies in a South African context, which is very important to reckon with. While circumstances may be what they be in the States or in other countries, South Africa is unique in the fact that it's a third world country, the challenges that we face as a nation, and we can't simply refer to studies from other countries and expect it to apply for us as well.
All right, okay. I don't want this to derail what we want to do. I know that there's obviously divergent views, and, there's one end, but Quinton, you want to just comment?
Just very quickly, thank you very much. I appreciate your answer. With regards to something like the Adverse Childhood Experience Index, which talks a bit more about environment, you said you've done a study of, 8,000 people. That's great. Can you, firstly, where's it published? Secondly, who were the academics that were involved? So is it blind, double blind? What type of study is it? And also, did you take into consideration things like the ACE index, where it speaks about environments and people that grow up in certain environments that are more prone to substance misuse in growing up?
All right, okay. Can I arrest this here and now? Because otherwise it's going to derail us, and this becomes, an academic debate. And let's come back to the subject. Let's accept that there's divergent views and more work still needs to be done in terms of establishing whether or not this is indeed a gateway. But let's come back to you now, your organization, Consent Young People of South Africa. Tell us a little bit in perhaps 1 minute or less.
It's a community-based and youth-focused organization that was started by young people in 2007, if I'm not mistaken, and then registered as an MPO in 2010. There's a big focus on awareness campaigns. As was already said by in the previous segment, there's a need for awareness, and prevention is better than cure. We visited over 3,000 schools since 2013 to speak with the young people. We share with them the first-hand testimonies of those who have been involved in drugs. We find we have a very good response to that. We are also working in the prisons in South Africa, and we have a 3-week restoration program for those struggling with substance abuse problems. We don't charge anything for that program. And since January 2013, we've had 14,000 young people sign in with us, many of whom have returned to school, to work, to their responsibilities as parents and fathers, mothers, and breadwinners for their homes. And we believe that through this process, enough can be done to change the direction in which the country is going due to the epidemic we have of drug addiction across the country at the moment.
All right. Okay, so let's get back. I mean, we touched a little bit on the impact of substance abuse, in terms of, its effect on social life, physical, mental, and all other aspects. But let's look at, in order to try and understand how to tackle this problem, we probably need to, we have to understand how it comes about in the first place. So let's look at the risk factors for substance abuse. Your view?
Well, I think you're absolutely right in that it is a systemic issue. And so in a third world country, you face this challenge a lot more. One of the massive risk factors is poverty, quality of life. So if you come from an environment which is psychologically distressing, if you come from a traumatic background, abuse, massive link to substance use and child abuse and things like that. So a lot of the challenges that we already face in South Africa, those things are leading towards substance abuse, which is causing a substance abuse epidemic here as well.
Do you concur that poverty has a role to play?
I do agree, and there are other factors I would also add, although there are socio-economic factors, the breakdown in the family structure, the lack of fathers, but we have to look at the underlying factors as well. With addiction, we would say that there is always something underlying, whatever that may be, that leads the person into a lifestyle of drug abuse and addiction. And we would say that we have to accept as one of the underlying factors dagga as a gateway drug, because we have information firsthand from the users themselves. It's almost without a doubt the first drug that young people come into contact with in this country. We've also done much work amongst the schools and found that teachers and learners alike state that dagga is the biggest challenge that they face in this country at the moment.
I'll obviously invite comments from the audience as well, not so much on whether dagga is a gateway, but in terms of other risk factors, issues such as social class, does that come into play? Level of education, does that come into play? I see a few hands in the audience,
from the organization as I just said today. So what I like to briefly say, each and everyone who's an addict today, they started with weed. I'm one of the guys I was once an addict, but now I'm clean. But 70% of the people who are using drugs today, they all tell they started with weed, then they upgraded to certain drugs. Some may go to Nyaupe, Menrex, you'll name the drugs. But dagga is the main point. If dagga, it wasn't there, most of the people will never go further to smoke drugs.
Can we get a view from other people as well?
Good morning, my name is Sherwin and I belong to the organization SABC, Concern Young People of South Africa. Just a little bit, brief background as to where I come from. I know it's been mentioned that poverty is one of the reasons for the drug abuse, etc. But in my case, I was an individual that I didn't smoke cigarettes, consume alcohol, or even had the thought of even consuming drugs. And I came from a fairly good social background and a fairly good religious stance as well. And it was about 5 years where I had an experience where I was offered a drug, one of the most highly addictive drugs on the market, called cocaine. And it was in the moment of that decision when I consumed it that my destiny had been shaped. And for me, it was just a process of a matter of time before, I had reached rock bottom. And just from my experiences as well, I was never one to consume dagga or cannabis, but I had two experiences, near-miss experiences, where I did on the first time where I consumed that after being taking cocaine, and I had a slight diagnosis of drug psychosis. So with me, from my experience, I want to say, abstinence is the only safe way.
All right,
and
abstinence indeed. We're going to come back to that because it's time for a quick commercial break. When you come back, we continue our discussion on this very, very, very important subject. Please stay with us.
Need a natural multivitamin and mineral immune booster that lifts your energy and balances your pH levels? Sure you do. Lerumo, with 15 times the potassium in bananas, 17 times the calcium in milk, 10 times the vitamin A in carrots, 25 times the iron in spinach, 9 times the protein in yogurt, and 97 times the vitamin B in kale. Lerumo, the superhero. On the inside. Available at Dis-Chem, leading pharmacies and health stores countrywide. Lerumo, feel the difference.
Why is there a dispute over who is the rightful heir to the throne?
What I can say is that Masindi is a woman. She's a girl. She's a girl child. Because I think that if she was a male, there's no way that anybody was going to dispute the fact that she is the rightful heir.
Do you recognize her as your rightful heir?
Yeah, no, I will definitely say that she is my daughter. She grew up there.
What is the intention?
I want my throne.
Join me in Port Zedu live every Monday to Thursday at 17:30.
Welcome back. The subject is substance abuse. If you've just joined us, this is what we're talking about. I have Chris Kemp, a clinical psychologist in private practice based in Bryanston, and we're now joined by Mr. Stephen Kanyile. Mr. Kanyile is the school principal of the famous Maurice Isaacson High School, and he's here to tell us a little bit about, some of the projects that he's undertaken in that community. Welcome to Health Talk.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for having
Before
me.
we start, you had a response, or you wanted to comment on some of the questions that were put earlier, yeah?
Yes, our last audience member who spoke. I appreciated that because he spoke about how none of the sort of risk factors that we spoke about applied to him.
Yeah.
And I think it's useful to note in that when we talk about risk factors, we're talking about general trends. If those things do not apply to you, no one should feel that they are sort of immune to addiction or not at risk for addiction. It really is something that can happen to anyone. And I think he highlighted that very well for us as well.
Yeah, okay. So this cuts across all strata,
Absolutely.
social class, economic status, and so on.
Absolutely, and even from a psychological perspective, some people are simply at more risk of addiction than others,
Right.
especially if you have a parent or a family member who's also suffered from addiction.
Yeah. Mr. Kanyile, earlier we said, it's important to understand the root causes and the risk factors for substance abuse in order that we can try and tackle this problem. But I'm told that you have undertaken some projects in that community in and around Maurice Isaacson High School to try and tackle this problem. Do you perhaps want to just give us a sense of what this is about?
Thank you. What we are trying to do, remember, we're a school in the township.
Right.
Right in the middle of the township. So we are experiencing quite a lot when it comes to issues of drugs. We have learners based maybe because of the environment around us. We have learners that come to school and you can see that they are really into these issues in terms of drugs. So you then pick up that it becomes very difficult for a teacher in class to can really achieve the goals that he or she wants to achieve, because these learners are high. Instead of really receiving the information, they're in another world. So it becomes a challenge for the teachers. So based on that experience, we decided that we can't just keep quiet. As I talk, I'm not just talking about Maurice Isaacson. It's a sketch that is around all the schools, especially in the townships. It's what I believe we need to start really making noise about. We need to make all other people to be aware of what is happening in schools, so that we look at what is it that can be done in terms of bringing heads together, so that this sketch can be fought. We are on the verge of trying what we can try in terms of looking at ways to try. We cannot finish it maybe, but I think there is some contribution that we can come up with. As a school, we are having some partnerships that we are looking at. We have
Before you get into detail, let's take Venda from Port Elizabeth, I'm told. Venda, welcome to Health Talk.
Hello, yes. Now, my biggest concern, hello?
Yes, you're with us, yeah?
Okay, my biggest concern when it comes down to the whole dachas being a gateway drug, sorry if we're coming back to the subject, but it all comes down to drug dealers. Now, as a young kid, still in high school, primary school, even no matter what school you are, if you come from a rich or poor upbringing, now you see your friends smoking dacha, now you want to know where you can get, where you don't have proper guidance of where to get, of now you start going to your local drug dealer. 3-4 times later, the drug dealer would say, hey, listen, I've got a little bit of cocaine. Would you like a little bit of this? Let's try this. Or I've got some tuck, or I've got something different. And that's the problem with the gateway drug. It's not just dagga starting out. It's dagga moving on to someone else by introduction of the dealers. So I would not say the problem is with substance abuse. The problem comes to the dealers themselves, because if it's not for the supplier, how could there be a demand?
Very interesting. Well, thank you very much for your contribution. Very interesting. But would you like to perhaps comment before Mr. Kanyile?
Sure. Well, I think that what he's getting at is sort of what we spoke about in terms of regulation. A lot of the arguments in terms of legalization is that if it's legalized, we can regulate it. You can't buy drugs at a bottle store, you can only buy alcohol. In the same way, people are saying if you sell marijuana safely with regulations, with age restrictions, then you'll avoid these kinds of issues.
Yeah. It was interesting to get a comment from the Department of Social Development in terms of drug dealers being, a conduit and perhaps promoting, this whole notion of substance abuse. Yeah?
As the department and as government, we are working in an integrated and coordinated manner. We're working with the South African Police Services because they have to focus on the issue of reducing the supply of drugs in our communities, because one of the biggest risk factors is the easy access of drugs in our communities, because they are even sold at street corners. And I'm talking of illicit drugs, not only dagga, not nyaupe is sold at street corners. So we are working with the South African Police Service. They are trying to reduce the demand, the supply, of drugs in our community, so that if they are not there, the drugs are not there. It means that even the prevention interventions that are there, that are aimed at educating our children and our youth about the dangers of drugs, they will then, because there won't be easy access, so there will be some impact that will be realized. But now, because it's like easy access, the flow of drugs are so rife, in our communities. That's where the problem is.
Thank you. All right, let's get back to Mr. Kanyile. So a bit more specifics in terms of what your programs are, are doing to try, in the first instance, prevent this problem from taking place. Yeah.
Yeah, we are just trying a little bit on our side as a school. We have formed some partnerships with some people that are on the same level in terms of fighting this thing. We have formed a partnership with Kabelo Mabalane, who is having some movement, anti-substance abuse movement. But also there is Kimoja, Kishap, Without Drugs, which is an initiative which is also trying to get to schools to try and educate these youth, the youth about substance abuse and how to really avoid these things. It's not very easy, because while we're at school, you realize that there are learners who are not just using these drugs, but also they are used to push the drugs around. So these are the challenges that we are facing in school. So if we can get more people to really come on board, especially in schools, because that is where you'll get the majority of the youth, to try and educate. That is what we are trying to do. We are just saying it's very important for us as a school to say the youth today is facing quite a lot. So when it comes to drugs, we can't be quiet and pretend as if things are normal. We must make noise about it, try and reach out who can really be looking for help. Where I am currently, I'm getting some people who are coming to school, even if they're not parents from the same school, who are asking what is it that can be done about the drugs. We have heard you somewhere talking about these things. What is it that I can do for my child who is not even at school now? He has left school, I'm not sure what to do. He has been at rehabs and so on, but it's still not working well. So I'm saying I think this is bigger than what we are looking at. But I think we are, as a school, I can indicate that we appreciate the assistance from the SAPS. We appreciate the assistance from SANCA as well, because we work very well with SANCA in Soweto in particular, because when we suspect or when we have realized that this learner is in drugs, we send these learners, we refer them to SANCA, where they test them and they come back. Then we get the results, whether they are into these things or they are beginning to experience.
So in terms of managing risks now, perhaps let me put this question to you. What are some of those telltale signs that, in fact, you could be picking up that a teenager or anybody else, for that matter, is going that route, so that you try and arrest this as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Well, I think in all things, in psychological distress as well, what you really want to be looking for is changes in behavior. If you notice any sort of significant changes, it's hard to unilaterally say, oh, people will socially withdraw when they're using substances, or people will do this.
Yeah.
You know your child, you know your friend, you know your partner.
Right.
If you see a noticeable change in their behavior, it's cause for concern, whether it's substance use or some kind of other psychological distress that they're going through.
Right. I believe we have another comment or question from the audience.
It's a comment, sir.
Yeah.
My name is Nkosie Tusaleni, and I'm originally from a well-known township called Kailicha in Cape Town. Just a first introduction. I actually thank God that in this country we don't have a president like one for the Philippines who says he'll rather gladly annihilate all the drug addicts. And we thank God that for such organizations such as SABC, the working together of the principals, the teachers, that they really stretch out their hands to the children. And like Adam said in the beginning, substance abuse is actually just the fruit of a deeper problem within. So it's actually, in order for us to prevent and fight against such things, it wouldn't help us to just educate them about it, but to look into it and listen, try and listen more to the youngsters and the addicts as to what their problem really is, and we try to fix that and dig out the roots instead of trying to cut down the tree, because eventually it will grow again.
Very profound statement there. Okay, time for another quick break. When we come back, we now come and talk about treatment and rehabilitation for those that are trapped in this spiral. Please stay with us.
The Law Society has slammed notices sent to 4 universities to jack up standards or risk losing their LLB courses. The Council on Higher Education issued a stern warning to the universities to conform within 6 months.
I think it will affect the university. I think outside the law faculty, there's a funding issue.
It's been 112 years since Enoch Sontonga died as a relatively unknown composer, choir master and teacher. But today his legacy lives on through his greatest composition, Nkosi Sikeleli Afrika.
For all your news updates, stay tuned to Your World from Monday to Sunday.
Phones, cloud systems and robots have taken over a lot of what used to be done manually.
Our accounting system is actually based on the cloud.
Google nowadays can tell you where you parked your car.
And Africa's entrepreneurs are using technology to create.
With Pocket Masipala, you can basically do all the services that you would do at the municipality physically by going there, but you can now do them on a mobile app.
Join me, Phumelele Zondi, on Sundays at 9 p.m. on SABC News. Well, a very good morning and welcome to AM News live at 10:00 hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that the Swallows are out of the ABC Multiple League and drop to the amateur fourth tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.
Addiction is a chronic disease. People can't simply stop using drugs for a few days and be cured. Most patients need long-term care to stop using completely and recover their lives. Ekiso Clinics is a group of private inpatient psychiatric clinics that prides itself on providing individual integrated treatment for a wide range of addictive conditions. We spoke to Dean Benjamin, who is an occupational therapist. She explains the type of services they provide.
We are a primary care inpatient facility, and we run a 4-week intense inpatient program, which really means that the client is admitted into our clinic for the full 4-week period, and we are a dual diagnosis unit, which means that we look both at the addiction aspect as well as the mental health aspect.
Dr. Duncan, who is a GP and currently working at the Stepping Stone Clinic, explains to us how drug use puts a lot of stress on family and how some addicts don't see the problems they are causing themselves and those around them.
I think the important thing with substance abuse is that it has a significant impact on almost every aspect of people's lives. Other illnesses, even fatal conditions or terminal type conditions like cancer often bring families together, but substance abuse disorders tend to have an overwhelming effect both on the person themselves and both physically and psychologically.
Treatment should include medical and mental health services as needed, according to Dr. Duncan. But the challenge is with the lack of resources.
I think probably globally, but especially South Africa, there's a lack of resource for effective treatment. Inpatient treatment especially can be expensive. Fortunately in South Africa, medical aids do have to pay for inpatient treatment, but there's certainly a lack of funding for people once they leave treatment, so they'll often spend 2 or 3 weeks in a treatment centre, and then the medical aid doesn't support any funding subsequent to that.
Treatment for drugs usually includes therapy, one or more types of counselling and drug education.
The DBT is really the underpinning of our program, which informs our group therapy process as well as our individual therapy process, and it's about balancing self-acceptance with learning new skills in order to improve self-esteem and minimize distress, which is really important for the addictive population because that's often what they struggle with, losing a sense of self, dealing with life on life's terms, so emotional dysregulation, struggling with things that come up for them, and DBT really informs us into being able to facilitate change behaviorally, emotionally, as well as in their thought processes as well. So that's really important to us.
Right, it's important to everybody, of course. Now, we continue our discussion on substance abuse. With me is, we still have Chris Kemp, clinical psychologist based in Branchton out in Johannesburg. And we're now joined by Victor Mbinga. Victor is the service manager at Sanka. Welcome to Health Talk, Victor.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Before I come and ask you about Sanka, I believe we have somebody in the audience who would like to make a comment, perhaps related to the issue of resources. The lady at the back, yep.
Thank you. I'm Mrs. Mahlangu from Gwandebele. I'm coming from the organization Umphakathi Okhathazekile, which is concerned young people of South Africa. At Gwandebele, we lack of place to help our children. I came here with our son. We help them at Gwasizabantu, at KwaZulu Natal. I just travel with taxi to go at Gwasizabantu at the place called Gwamapumulo. If I can get a place at Gwandebele, I can do more with our children because they are full in the street, they sleep in the street. There's a big problem in South Africa with our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure we're going to get comments from that. But before that, because that talks to now support and resources and helping people, let's start with you in terms of the principles of treatment for people that are, have this problem of substance abuse.
Sure. Well, I mean, there's a lot of different rehabilitation programs. Right. And I always encourage people to sort of, if you feel like something isn't working for you, to try something else. I think the idea of taking one unilateral approach to every single person isn't going to work because for some people, they just can't connect with certain aspects of that. Fortunately, in South Africa, we do have different programs offering different sorts of rehabilitation programs.
So the issue is that it's a multidisciplinary type approach.
Absolutely.
That everybody is involved.
And one of the comments made in the video, which is so important, is that there's a massive correlation between mental health problems and substance use. And unfortunately, access to good mental health care in South Africa is very, very difficult right now.
Yeah, yeah. Victor, let's hear about what SANCA does. Tell us about, SANCA. What is SANCA? What do you do in this regard?
All right, thank you. SANCA stands for the South African National Council on Alcohol and Drug Dependence. And our focus is from prevention to treatment to aftercare of the population of South Africa, basically, who are affected in some way or the other with regards to the issue of drugs and substance abuse. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of substance abuse, perhaps let's break it down. In terms of prevention, what is SANCA doing for prevention?
Thank you for that. I think the principal mentioned it, that one of the programs that we actually rolling out in partnership with the Department of Social Development is the Kemoja program. We realizing that, and it's not just us, but even the UN is saying it can't be prevention unless it's evidence-based, unless there's foundation to confirm that there is efficacy to whatever you're doing. So the Kemoja program is actually assisting in reducing the young people experimenting with drugs or substance abuse. That's one of the programs that we're running. We are at the clinics because it's another point of contact with the community that we found. We run a lot of programs even at ECD centers, because I think something that came out is that from 9 years of age you already start to notice usage of drugs and substance abuse. And the thing about prevention is that it's not always about talking to them about drugs, but it's about instilling skills that will assist them in being resilient against the possibility of drugs and substance abuse. And which is why the emphasis goes into health, it goes into financial management, it goes into self-esteem and all those things that we're trying to tackle, so that by the time the temptation to use drugs comes, a person already has internal resources to resist the possibility of using drugs and substances.
Perhaps let's get a comment from the Department of Social Development in terms of the comment the lady made around, here's somebody who's committed to try and do something to help in this kind of, in tackling these problems, but lacks resources.
Okay, yeah, I know that resources will never be sufficient to fund each and every NPO that knocks in our door. But in Gauteng, for example, we are funding for inpatient treatment services. We are funding 11 inpatient treatment centers with a bed capacity of 849 beds to treat people who can't afford to pay, who don't have medical aids. So we're also having other treatment options like SANCA. It's an outpatient, it's a community-based service where you can go and be treated. There are multidisciplinary team members, there are professionals that will deal with you at outpatient, basis, because not everyone has to go through an inpatient, treatment programs. We are also funding the prevention programs. We are partnering with quite a number of NPOs that will provide, resources to them to assist us as government to deal with the scourge of substance abuse. And additionally, our Premier Makura launched what we call the Gauteng City Region Anti-Substance Abuse Social Movement Campaign, where she's calling all the community members to join hands with government and mobilize towards combating the problem of substance abuse, because government alone cannot, win the fight against the scourge of substance abuse. So from Mpumalanga, I know they've got government-run treatment centers. Mama, you don't have to go up to KZN, because in your own province, there is a Swartfontein treatment center that treats people who cannot afford to pay for their own, treatment. And I'm sure there are other funded NPOs in the province as well. I will give Mama the contact details of the coordinator of substance abuse in Mpumalanga, and she will assist them further.
Great stuff. Now, we're going to obviously continue our discussion on treatment, but I believe we have 3 tweets that we'll quickly go over. And Eve Limbrick says, substance abuse is no joke. Of course, we agree with that. Fortune says, the main question to be answered is, who abuses substance? This question will lead to the solution, I would imagine, yeah? And the last one, J5, says, if you suffer from substance abuse, get help before it makes you believe you're invisible and fearless and, you self-destruct yourself. Very, very, very pertinent statements out there. You want to perhaps comment on...
I'd like to comment on the last one, because I think an important thing to acknowledge is that the responsibility has to lie with the person struggling with the substance.
Right.
If they are not willing to engage in the recovery and the treatment, it's not going to work. You can lead a horse to water, etc. So essentially that person really has to be committed to their own recovery and responsible for their own recovery as well.
Right. I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds or so.
Yeah.
In terms of, how you think, everybody can come in and help in terms of dealing with this scourge.
It's unfortunate because for the families that are and the communities that are living with people with substance abuse, they sadly are the ones who are victimized as a result of this whole, but it's for them to be hopeful and to continue to be supportive. That's one thing that we're trying to encourage. Don't lose hope. Keep at it. At some point, it will sink into this individual that my actions and the impact it's having on the people that love me. And, all the people I've ever interacted with that have recovered will tell you it's only at that point that I realize that I need to change. And so it might not come today for some. It might take a while for others, but support is necessary.
Right. So on that positive note, that I think we're going to have to leave it because we've run out of time. And yes, I hope that the message is loud and clear. This is obviously a serious problem, but it can be beaten if all of us come together and try and pull resources together to try and fight this as a unit. I want to thank all my guests, Chris Kemp, clinical psychologist based in Bryanston, at least with us here, Victor Mbinga, service manager at Sanka, and of course all the other panel members, and of course all the studio guests that we had. And thank you so much for your contributions. And for you guys at home, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your tweets. Until we meet next week, same time, please do take care.